Before the names Lodz and Auschwitz became symbols of ash and wire, Zvi was a child in a home defined by stability. His father spent his nights studying Torah, a constant presence that provided the family with a clear, rhythmic center. The family owned a large textile factory, a business that reached into Germany and beyond. Their status was reflected in the rare presence of a telephone in their home by 1938, marking them as a household of significant means. It was a crowded, lively tree. Zvi lived with his mother and father, his brother Jacob, an unmarried sister, and an older married sister who had just begun a family of her own with a new baby. This wasn't just a home of wealth, but one of ingrained responsibility. For years, the family provided financial support to distant relatives, establishing a culture where looking after one's own was the default setting. That world was entirely shattered in 1939. When the German invasion reached them, the mansion and the business were replaced by the narrow, closed-off streets of the Lodz Ghetto. The family's previous comfort was swapped for a landscape of cold and daily hunger. In this environment, the basics of survival became the only priority, and the traditional roles of parent and child began to blur. At 11 years old, Zvi stepped into the gap left by his parents' sudden loss of power. He became the provider, slipping through the ghetto fences at night to find food. Every trip was a gamble with his life, taken to ensure his parents had enough to survive another day. Zvi's childhood ended the moment he took responsibility for his family's survival. While the ghetto stripped away his youth, it reinforced the instinct to protect the family unit at any cost. In August 1944, the family was forced onto cattle cars for the final liquidation of the ghetto. They were packed together for days without air or water, a journey designed to strip away the last remains of their humanity before they even reached their destination. Upon arrival at Auschwitz, they were driven onto the selection platform. In the chaos of barking dogs and shouting guards, the rules of life and death were swift. Any woman holding a child was immediately marked for the gas chambers. Zvi's mother recognized the danger instantly. In a final attempt to save her married daughter, she reached out and took the infant, hoping the daughter would be sent toward the labor lines and a chance at life. But the daughter could not leave her child. She reached back and pulled the baby into her own arms, refusing to buy her survival with a permanent separation. Grandmother, mother, and child remained together. They were moved as a single unit directly toward the gas chambers. In a system built to destroy every human connection, 3 generations of women chose to walk into the dark as a family rather than survive apart. On the labor side of the camp, Zvi and his father were still together. Zvi continued his rebellion against the camp's starvation, sneaking through the barracks to secure an extra, stolen portion of soup for his father every single day. One evening, Zvi returned with the soup, only to find his father's body. He had died while Zvi was away. Standing there with the bowl, Zvi was suddenly alone. The person he had been fighting to keep alive was gone, and his primary connection to the world before the wire was severed. Survival became a matter of mechanical endurance during the winter death march. The prisoners were forced into the snow, walking for miles under the threat of execution for anyone who slowed down or stumbled. Zvi forced his body to keep moving, surviving the cold and the exhaustion, until he was finally liberated on May 5th. Even after the guards fled, the horror didn't stop. Zvi soon learned that his single sister, who had survived years of the camps, was murdered by dogs just 2 days before the liberation. While recovering in Italy, Zvi believed he was the only member of his family left on Earth. The sprawling tree he had grown up in appeared to have been entirely leveled. Then a miracle of logistics occurred. Through a network of survivors sharing names and sightings across Europe, Zvi received word that his brother Jacob had also survived and was in Germany. The realization that he wasn't alone changed everything. The survival of a single brother provided a living link to his past and the momentum to begin looking toward a future. Zvi traveled to Israel with youth Aliyah, arriving as a survivor at the Atlit detainee camp. At Atlit, officials tried to categorize him, offering secular or religious placements using colored cards. Zvi refused to be processed. He demanded a religious framework, protecting the core identity his parents had modeled in the years before the war. He was eventually taken in by his Aunt Sarah. His new life began in a single cramped room with a fold-out bed, a sharp contrast to the mansion in Poland, but a place where he was finally safe. From that room, Zvi rebuilt. He found work, married, and had children of his own. The Holocaust had claimed his parents, his sisters, his niece, and his home. But by holding on to his faith and choosing to build a family in Israel, Zvi ensured that the thread starting in that house in Poland was never truly cut. He planted a new tree in the soil of his own choosing.